Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mary Giuliani Live. I am so excited about tonight's show. I've got Dave Markowitz, who is an amazing author and a healer, and he's doing things that I've never really heard of in terms of helping people that have that are highly sensitive or that are empaths really heal in some very deep and profound ways. So stay tuned for Dave. He's in my virtual green room. In the meantime, though, I wanted to mention a couple of things. Make sure if you are online right now that you can actually chat out questions to Dave during the show. All you have to do, that's the beauty of the live stream, is you just log into the chat room. It's right next to the live stream on my Watch Live page. And if you are already logged into Facebook, just click on the little Facebook button and you'll automatically get logged in. And also, and just feel free to type out your questions for Dave or comments throughout the show. We'd be happy to field those for you. Also, if you're new to the show, the whole point of this show is to really help you get inspired to transform your life by watching other people that are living a really wonderfully transformed life. And that's what really inspired me on my path, and watching other people really going for it and really stretching outside of their comfort zones and going for their passions. And so watching other people do that has really made it possible for me to do it, because of course when we see other people that are similar to us, then we know we can do it too. So one thing that you should make sure of is, if you want to be in the know of who is coming up on the show, you've got to get on my email list. All you need to do is go up to my website, marygiuliani.net, watch live, excuse me, not watch live, go to the sign up for the newsletter tab, and just put in your email address, and I will be sending you a once-a-week email just sharing who's coming up on the show, and actually audio and video links of the previous show, so you'll have all that information. And of course, I'll throw in a few inspirational blog posts here and there. So make sure you get on my email list. And also, if you're an iPhone person or an iTunes person, I've got an iTunes channel, and you can get the show automatically downloaded into your iTunes every single week by subscribing to that channel, and the name is Mary Giuliani Live. So that's easy, isn't it? So let's talk about Dave here. Okay, so I found out about Dave through Susan Lander, who was a guest that I had on about a month or so ago, and I'm so excited. And so thank you, Susan, for Dave, because I read his book, and I'm just like, and I've read a lot of books, and it was really, really eye-opening for me to read what he has really come up with in terms of helping empaths and highly sensitive people heal on some really interesting levels. So let me give you a little bit of Dave's background. He's a best-selling author and intuitive health facilitator who has helped thousands on their journey towards wholeness. He began attracting clients who'd done a lot of spiritual work but hadn't seen improvements using traditional, alternative, or complementary modalities. And he intuited that his clients' pains and illnesses weren't really their own, but that their empathic abilities made them energetic sponges. And so Dave has developed a program, a 5-step process that helps people that are highly sensitive see their gifts as a blessing and not a curse, and also helps them give back what isn't theirs. So he's the author of the book Self-Care for the Self-Aware, a guide for highly sensitive people, empaths, intuitives, and healers. And he's been on Amazon's top 20 in its category for the past 41 consecutive months. Congratulations. And get this, his work has been endorsed by best-selling authors like Shirley MacLaine, Lynn Andrews, Dannon and Catherine Brinkley, and Dr. Meg Blackburn Lossie. So he's actually lectured with Deepak Chopra, Gary Null, and more. So I am so thrilled to have him. So let's welcome Dave Markowitz. Dave, welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, wow. I just, like I said, I'm so glad that we connected, because I've been around the healing world and a lot of different healers and different people that are psychic and have a lot of intuitive gifts. And I have noticed that many, one of the beauties of their gifts is that the sensitivity is that they can tap into different realms and really connect on deep levels. But then there's the other side of it that can really be painful and that sort of thing, and cause illnesses. And so I'm I'm just curious. I always like to start with like what got you started on this particular path and what led you to this specialty.
It's a great question. And basically, I was doing more traditional medical intuition work and more traditional energy healing work, which is almost
Right.
an oxymoron, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I had moved from New York City to Portland.
Hmm.
Spirit said go west, and I said no. And 2 months later, I was living in Portland. I'm sure you can relate if you ever fight with spirit. You pretty much are going to lose. It's just a matter of when.
Yes.
So I found myself out here not knowing too many people. A friend of a friend had a birthday party,
Hmm.
and he invited me to this event. And I didn't realize till I got there it was one of those party bus tours with 7 bars in 7 hours.
Oh my God.
And I hadn't drank pretty much since college. So, as the chef from South Park says, there's time and place for everything, and it's called college. So this, bar crawl, it was kind of a nightmare for most empaths, but I didn't know I was empathic quite yet. I certainly didn't have the words for it, even though people, I mean, literally a guy came up to me and said, you're an empath. And I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, I'm the head of the Portland meetup for empaths, and you, sir, are an empath. So I had these little hints, but I just didn't want to take those hints. And at the end of this evening, not drinking anything other than water the entire night, I
Uh-huh.
was drunk. I mean,
Wow.
like sloppy, slurring words, walking funny drunk. And that's when it hit me, oddly enough, in this moment of confusion, I had a lot of clarity that said, oh, this is what an does. He or she or whatever, whomever, absorbs energy from other people. And
Right.
if that person is around a bunch of people drinking,
Right.
said empath will probably start feeling drunk themselves.
Right. Interesting. Wow. So,
that,
so
that
the,
set the whole thing in motion.
okay. And so from that point, I'm just curious, like, what was the time span from that night in that bar to writing your book? How long has it been?
Oh, probably within maybe 6 months or so, the book became really clear to me
Oh my God.
because so many of the people from that moment on, I attracted every new person that came to me was highly empathic, highly sensitive, had done a lot of traditional healing, alternative
Right.
healing, complementary healing, spiritual growth work, and just really wasn't getting the results they wanted. And
Right.
they just kept finding me and finding me, and I was just intuiting to tell them that they're an empath. Now that I know what that is, I can
Right.
now tell them about it, and then I had to intuit how to help them. And after
Right.
a few months, it became really clear there were some very common things, not just on what got them there, but also how to help them really start using the empathic abilities as a gift, and also start to healing those empathically transmitted illness and pain. So the book was kind of writing itself from day one at that point.
Wow.
And at one point, it just became so clear that, okay, I need to write get this from the head onto
Right.
onto paper. And from that point on, the book relatively easy to write because it was sort of written already.
Oh my God.
Did a couple of edits and sent it out. Did self-publishing route, and next thing you know, it's on Amazon's top 20 for almost 4 years. So
Wow. So if that guy
right
in
place,
that
right time.
bar had not said something, I would imagine it would probably have gotten to you eventually that you're an empath, but
Yeah,
so you'd have been having hints. Like what kind of hints had you
yeah.
had before that?
Uh, just people throwing that word around to me a lot. Highly
Uh-huh.
sensitive. And for
Uh-huh.
whatever reason, I just didn't want to own it. I don't. I just didn't. you
Well, yeah,
know.
I mean, it's not like something that I would think in our culture, especially for men, it's not something, being sensitive is not something that men are socialized to be, right? I mean,
Right. This is
so
true.
it makes sense. Okay, so the first chapter you talked about how we find each other, how empaths and people find each other, and and one of the things that really struck me right away in the very beginning of the book was how you talk about we're all connected metaphysically, but physically we're not, nor should we want to be. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Well, there's a very common belief and understanding in metaphysics that we're all one.
Yes.
And as much as we like to embrace that as a reality, the other reality is that physically you're you and I'm me. And it doesn't really serve. And this is what I learned in this work that kept coming to me. it doesn't serve us to kind of mesh together like that,
Right.
even though it might sound romantic or something.
Right.
Uh, so we have to recognize physically we have our own issues, our own soul path, etc., and we should follow those individual paths first. And they
Right.
often do include being and doing things for others. But what I was shown was doing and being things for others first weakens your own energy fields pretty dramatically
Yeah.
because it's not in alignment with your highest metaphysical truth,
Mm.
your heart knowledge, if you will.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we don't want to, carry other people's things, but empaths typically do. So I had to figure out how to help people stop
Right.
doing that and to heal what was being absorbed. Yeah.
So I think the thing that struck me the most was here, we're talking, the oneness, and we want to like feel the total connection with all of humanity. And yet, if we do that to a certain extent, it will make us sick because we're not taking care of our own energy and our own path and our own soul's purpose. And yet, and
Yeah.
so, and it's like, it's sort of like the cosmic boundary message. You know what
Hmm.
I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
and I love that you're sharing this. So, are like as far as the different people that you work with, are they surprised to hear that part of maybe why they're experiencing so much contrast or illness or whatever in their lives is because of this? Or, well, maybe before we even get into that, would you share a little bit about maybe what makes somebody empathic, and then what are the pros and cons of it, or
Sure.
highly sensitive? I'm assuming you're meaning highly sensitive kind of goes hand in hand with empathic.
In my experience, yes, I've
Okay.
seen people get upset and argue that the definitions are highly different.
Yeah.
And that's fine if that's what you want to do. I have
Yeah.
better things to do really than
Yeah.
argue about
Semantics.
definitions.
Yeah.
Um, Highly sensitives and empaths, basically, we take in energy from other people. Now, energy is always flowing between people, whether they're 2 feet away from each other or 2,000 miles. Obviously, the strength can be very different.
Right.
So we need to learn to manage what's coming in a healthy way. Empaths that I meet typically I would call unskilled empaths, meaning they're just taking all that energy in and kind of holding it, and
Right.
owning it. The skilled empath I found actually lets it go through. And there's a really
Right.
big difference from trying to put up a wall, and I'm sure we're going to get to that later.
Yeah.
So the benefits of being highly empathic, I think, are that you can feel where people are. So,
Yeah.
for example, if I say, "Hey, Mary, how you doing?" and you say, "Yeah, fine," and my empathic abilities can feel underneath that and say,
Right.
"Wow, she's not really fine." I
Right.
can really connect with you on that level,
Right.
and then you feel seen and heard. Now trust is built.
Yes.
Nothing invasive, psychic kind of thing.
Right.
I don't get information that no one wants to
Of
give,
course.
but there's a deeper awareness, I think, for empaths and HSPs about what people are really going through. And I've noticed one of the most disliked things in being an empath is people who would say, "Hi, how you doing? Fine. How are you? Fine. How's your kids? Fine." Like real superficial. Like
Yeah.
empaths want to like jump in and like, how's your heart chakra doing?
Yeah.
Have you done a past life reading this week? Like all these kind of whatever it is, you know. So the beauty of it is the ability to connect with people on a very deep level. And when you can really feel what people are, you can have compassion for them in a way
Right.
that might not have been possible if you were shut down.
Right.
The drawback, of course, as you mentioned, is taking on too much and actually keeping it. And that
Yeah.
leads to overwhelm and many of more popular diseases that people are fighting today.
Well, I know for me personally, I was socialized, well, I don't even know if it's socialized, but more in my family to, I was made to believe that I was responsible for my mom's feelings. I mean, it was
Right.
explicit. So, so unconditioned, deconditioning myself of that has been a process. And so, and it seems like, are you finding more women than men experiencing this kind of empath energy?
Yeah, I would say my client percentage is probably 80%. women,
Yeah.
give or take.
Yeah.
And partially because I think a lot of men don't reach out for help
Yeah.
as much. We
Yeah.
have perhaps stronger egos that say,
Yeah.
I can handle this. I'm going to go into my cave and I'm going to handle this.
Right.
And that might work with some things, but not with, not with these kind of things.
Right.
So, and I think also, as you pointed out, certainly certain generations, maybe less today, but certainly still existing and from the past, there was this definite, certainly in America at minimum, that this sort of patriarchal society that says, the women are supposed to do X, Y, and Z,
Right.
and you're responsible for everyone else's feelings,
Right.
and besides just like you know, everything like feelings, experiences,
Yes.
emotions,
Yeah.
energy. And like you pointed out, it's a very difficult thing to reprogram, if you want to use that phrase.
Yeah.
But it's important to do so. So to
Oh,
me, if you do that in a
absolutely.
few days or a few years, it doesn't matter. It has to be done to get out of that belief system because, metaphysically speaking, you're only responsible for your own soul path. Of course,
Right.
physically, if you have kids, you want to make sure they're fed, and if you have a
Right.
job, you want to do your best you can. That's a whole
Right.
different world.
Right.
Talking about the metaphysics, that talk about the soul path, what we're
Yes.
here to experience, what we're here to learn.
Yes.
And we can't really walk those paths for other people, which is what ends up happening if we're highly and unskilled in our empathy.
Okay. That's so good. Thank you for sharing that. So the chapter 3, this is, I think every person on a spiritual path has said this to themselves before, but I've done so much spiritual work. How can I be suffering with whatever emotional or physical ills that I have?
Yeah.
So how do you respond to this?
Well,
Well,
so yes, you have. Yes, you have.
well, look, can I just say, I'm sorry, I wanted to jump.
Yeah,
There
of
was one
course.
other piece here, is that that you do address going to the metaphysical pharmacy and not getting to the core issue. So,
Yeah, let's go back to the first part. Um, a lot of us do a tremendous amount of work. I've had people say, I've been doing this 6 decades. Why aren't I better yet?
yeah,
And it's an understandable question. I mean, it's certainly a logical question, but
yeah,
there's not a lot in metaphysics that's logical.
yeah,
In the physical world, you go to school for 4 years, you get a degree as a CPA or whatever, and you're a CPA. In metaphysics, it's 4 years, 40 years, or 4 lifetimes, or 400 lifetimes, and
right,
you still might not have it mastered yet. And
right,
that's a difficult thing for most people to embrace, especially intelligent people who feel, okay, I got this, it makes sense. I
right,
can I can do this right away. And I always tell people that's a warning sign that your heart's not in the lead right now. Your ego is running the show.
right,
And while there is a place for ego, of course, or else it wouldn't be there, it's not here. And we need to be really patient with learning and relearning things.
mm-hmm,
And people, if it takes X number of years or decades or whatever, so, I mean, I might sound sarcastic, and that's not really my intention, at least not right
right,
now. I'm sure I will be later. Um, uh, it's about acknowledging that good things take time. You
right,
know, the best people, best artists, musicians,
yes,
teachers didn't happen overnight. You
right,
had to do trial and error and learn and relearn and retrial. And this has to be, we need to be open to that in the metaphysical world also and be
right,
really patient with ourselves. And I'm sure and many of the listeners can relate, we're typically our own worst enemy
yes,
when we feel we have to know something really quickly or learn something quickly. And basically, it's unrealistic expectation,
mm-hmm,
which always leads to disappointment. So I
mm-hmm,
try to share that with people when I first start out with them. Don't expect to master this overnight.
mm-hmm,
I tell them I've been doing this and specifically doing this for about 6 years now, and I still forget to use my own tools.
oh
But the
yeah,
difference is I don't beat myself up for it anymore. I say, wow, I didn't use my tools for 40 plus years. How can I expect to just do them automatically all the time?
right,
But I know that when I use the tools, my life is amazing. I can manifest anything. My health is great, vibrant. Just anything's possible. When I forget to use my tools, not so much. It's really that simple. It's that direct for me, at least.
So then for you, did you actually get physically ill before you became aware of these issues for other people? Or
Not specifically. That's what got me into the sort of alternative medicine to begin with. I
mhm,
had an ailment years back and went to about 10 different, pretty well-known, prominent medical
mhm,
doctors and the like, and nothing, like
mhm,
no results at all. It seemed like
mhm,
they were just making things up. And, I don't want to disrespect these people. I'm sure they were doing the best they could. It just wasn't working for me. So I had to go outside the lines. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Uh, Western medicine's fantastic.
mhm.
It's miraculous what they can do, but
Right,
they can't do everything. Just like metaphysics can't do everything. We have
right.
to realize what things do and don't do, and then make wise choices.
Yeah, one of my favorite teachers, David Hawkins, used to always say, you really do need to approach things from a body, mind, and spirit level, and
Yeah,
sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other, sometimes it's all three.
right.
So basically, if I get the, the the premise correctly from where your work is all about, is that the reason why people that are empathic or that are highly sensitive really suffer with whether it's emotional or physical illness for the primarily is because they've actually absorbed the energy of other people and and felt over responsible and felt and not known how to clear that or allow that to flow through them. Is that right?
That's correct. Now, of course, we have things that are our own intrinsically
Okay.
from our own habits. If someone smokes, they might have, problems
Yes.
as an end result
Right.
of that. That's not an empathically absorbed thing.
Right.
So my work, a big part of it is really determining, is this empathically transmitted or is it
Right.
something that's your own? And once you're there, uh, the steps become really clear. But if you're guessing
Right.
wrong, which is what creates a lot of that frustration, you're going to be continually guessing, and then you're sort of on that hamster wheel of healing,
Right.
practitioner to practitioner, modality to modality,
Right.
trying. But if you've absorbed something and someone's not working with you aware of that, it's you might feel great for a couple hours or even a couple of days or whatever,
Right.
but the problems typically get reabsorbed or recreated.
Because they you haven't really gotten to the core issue of how you're
Right.
absorbing energy. Well, and
Exactly.
the piece on in the book about preventing empathic pain and illness, I love how you say, I'm not responsible for the soul path of another person, and neither are you. You may know this consciously, but odds are really high that as an empath who has not yet mastered releasing other people's energies, you haven't fully embodied this awareness. And so I just wanted to say a couple things about this. I do a lot of work on being true to yourself, and that's a big passion of mine is to help women be true to themselves and really follow their own calling, and which is one of the biggest things that stops people in my work is feeling like if I don't take care of you or whoever I'm supposed to or been socialized to take care of, then I'm going to feel the incredibly painful feeling of shame for being a selfish bad person. And
Hmm.
so, how do you? I would imagine this probably comes up quite a bit in your work because I mean, obviously, people do this for a reason, right?
Definitely. We get a lot of messages when we're younger,
Yeah,
perhaps the feminine more than the masculine, to put ourselves last. Not
yeah.
even second, but like
Like that's
last.
the virtue, the noble thing to do.
Right. It's considered, the martyr is embraced and even worshipped, to some
Yeah,
degree. And so it has this really powerful cultural connotation of being a good thing.
right,
And what I point out to people, like we're talking about, is that it's a belief system that's really not serving that person any longer.
right,
And it's not wrong or bad, it's just not in alignment with your truth. And the reason why I say it's not wrong or bad, even though that can perhaps be argued, is that by judging by calling it wrong or bad, we're actually judging our past.
right,
And I don't find that to be very effective either. I think it's very important to embrace our past. Say,
right,
okay, my past is my past. I can't do anything about it.
right,
Hopefully, I've learned what I needed to learn, and I'm here right now. What can I
right,
do and be in this moment that can create a better now, which will intrinsically create a better future?
right.
So it is a belief system that needs to be adjusted.
Yes.
and not shamed, like you're doing it wrong. It's
Yeah.
this that doesn't help anybody. We do that to ourselves enough. We don't need our our
Right.
practitioners to rub that in.
Right.
So yeah, it's we gotta relearn that and recognize that one of the biggest causes of fatigue, you know, acute or chronic, is being there too much for others. It just makes sense.
Yes.
It's just very logical. But if you don't step outside the paradigm that you grew up with, you might
Right.
not see that.
Right.
So, people like ourselves, we help others see that in themselves. And I
Right.
imagine we both had to see that in ourselves as well, just to be able to see that
Absolutely.
in others too.
So, you talk about as adult children, we've often tried, and this I noticed on my own healing path, we try to heal a parent directly or indirectly, but it can't be done, nor is it our job to do it. And so I know for me, being raised in an alcoholic home, I was the hero, and so that was the role that I probably took on in my soul's journey. It seemed to me assigned to me more as a child, but the point though is that I didn't really have complete awareness of that until like maybe the last 10 years. And once I really had awareness of feeling the need to rescue people, it really released me from a lot of unhealthy patterns. And
Yeah.
so, anything you want to say about just unhealed childhood wounds and how they drive us to sort of take care of others out of a unmet need, maybe from our childhood?
Well, I think you've said a lot right there. So, and first, congratulations for seeing that.
Yeah.
That's really important. And, we all have different wounding. Even the best intentioned parents
Yeah.
might, you know, be amazing people. And, just to be a parent is,
Oh, yeah.
you know, it's some work. But the fragile ego self of the child can get
Yes.
hurt really easily and can
Yes.
perceive needs not being met. And what I was shown in meditation that was prior to birth, we're in this state of oneness. I call it a soup. So
Yeah.
we're in this oneness soup with the Creator. For some crazy reason, we decided to incarnate into a physical body, and we come out expecting a similar level of unconditional love that we had when we were in this soup.
Yeah.
And my understanding is not too many people are really capable of giving that kind of level of love,
Right.
because that's a lot, right?
Right.
And so it creates this void. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of us spend a lot of our lives trying to fill that void with
Yeah.
things that don't really work,
Right.
whether it's trying to heal others,
Mm-hmm.
to make people laugh. It can be,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook. It can be alcohol. It can be overeating.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the addictions are trying to fill that void, and clearly they don't work.
Right.
So once we see that and really see that what we're doing isn't working, and we can try different things and say, what is it that will actually heal that void? And of course, it's a reconnection. So I do work with people, and I do recommend meditation. And a lot of times I hear something like, I'm not a good meditator, I tried already.
Right.
Well, if if Michael Jordan had that attitude, he wouldn't be who he was, right?
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you don't think you're good at it. And I share with them I'm very direct with, with my teachings, my experience, to show that I'm far from perfect. I've been meditating on average about an hour a day for decades,
Mm-hmm.
and still there are many times where during the entire hour I will have no silence, no
Yes.
mental silence, nothing but chatter, no bliss whatsoever,
Mm-hmm.
and I still acknowledge myself for taking the time to do it, because in that hour at least I wasn't running around, you know,
Yes.
answering phones, emails, etc. I was given me time.
Right.
And I think it's important to do that. So it's not about getting it right. It's about practicing. And then there are times where I'm just kind of blissed out for a long period of time, and neither one's bad. I don't judge either one.
Right.
So I share with people, we have to work and do things that fill the void that we know are effective. And one of them is, of course, the work that I teach, and being a better empath, and that lets you be a better person out in the world. It lets you be more vibrant, more
Yes.
connected, and healthier. And on the inner part, filling that void with the other aspect of it, the personal connection with the Creator, source energy, call it what you will. it's a pretty powerful combination, and I've really seen people turn their lives around, sometimes very quickly,
Wow.
by
Well,
doing these things.
yeah, I thought what would be really, really powerful for our viewers is to get to the part of where you actually share some of the processes to help people identify what parts of their body are holding the energy of someone else, how to identify
Right.
that, and then like the keyhole process, and then I love the return to senders, return to
Okay.
sender process. Do you mind if you go through those?
Sure. Well, in the order that you asked about, finding out what's going on within you. This is the kind of thing that most of us feel. If I only knew the answer to that, I'd be free.
Like
And
let's say
there's
you have like a chronic fatigue or some kind of, autoimmune thing or whatever. So,
right. And you can go to 10 different doctors,
mhm,
metaphysical or you know,
traditional.
non-traditional or traditional, and you might get 10 different answers. You'll get 10 different diagnoses and prognoses and recommendations, etc. And none of them are wrong. This is the amazing thing. But what I found was because of the way our bodies resonate or don't with certain things, the one recommendation that feels right to you is probably going to be the most effective.
Okay.
So, as far as the body scan, this is a process that I recommend. And I also tell people it's really hard to do on your own, especially at first.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where you go within, quiet the mind
Mm-hmm.
and let your body talk to you. Your body is always telling you what's going on, what to do, how to heal it, etc. And if we give ourselves time to listen in, we can get answers. Now, most people can't do that, and at times self-included, and it's not a measure of, lack of intelligence or lack of spiritual prowess. It's nothing to do with that. Sometimes we are so overloaded with other people's energies and our
Mm-hmm.
own overwhelm, it just makes it difficult. I compare it to looking for a needle in a haystack but blindfolded.
Right.
And having said that, someone shared with me that they found that when safe space is being held, a person can go about 11 times deeper into their own self
Mm-hmm.
than when they're on their own. My experience echoes that. And even if it's double, it's still a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So when I tell people, okay, I'm gonna take you through a process where you can see what's going on within you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll see an eye roll or something, and they'll be like, oh, I can't do that. I'm not visual. I'm not kinesthetic or whatever. I don't have inner awareness. And I just say, just give it a shot. And almost every time they say something like, wow, I didn't expect that.
Right.
Because the mind has its idea of what's going on and why, and typically the truth is underneath the level of the mind. So the body scan process is a way of bypassing the mind, getting into the truth. And once we have that, then obviously we can take a different route. So you also asked about the keyhole.
Oh,
Keyhole is
really
oh
quick though,
sorry
do you mind?
yeah
I'm
please.
just curious. So, just so the viewers know, so from what I understood about that process, is you're asking your clients to identify an area in their body, and then identify whether it's their own energy or someone else's energy, right?
Right.
And this is,
Mhm.
you do this over the phone or in person, right? I mean, mostly over
Both.
the phone, yeah. So it doesn't even have to be in
Phone,
person.
Skype.
Okay. And so, and the beauty of what I've heard you share is that this is the beauty of working with healers, I think, is that on our own, we have our own assumptions of what we think things are. But when you work with a healer, like someone like you, it opens your mind to other energies. And that was
Right.
very beautifully put. So I just wanted to share with the
Right.
viewers that.
Thank you. And it's so important to do that because if we have a mind's idea of what something is, we will follow that mind's idea
Right.
forever
Right.
until we get results. And, oftentimes that's not how to get the best results. The
Right.
other part of that process that I really like, now granted, as an intuitive, I can tell what's going on with someone for them. And sometimes I'm guided to do that, and that's fine. Wherever someone is, I honor
Right.
it, and it is what it is. But ultimately, my biggest excitement is when I can empower someone to do things on their own. So when I take them
Yes.
through that process, then they have much more a visceral experience of what I'm
Yes.
talking about. It's very different for me to say, well, you're holding grief in your solar plexus and it's
Right.
your mother's. And it's
Right.
from this event or whatever. Sure, 99% of the time I'm going to be accurate on that. And that's fine. But if they start getting this experience where they're in touch with it, at that point they can't argue. It's like, wow, like they're
Right.
seeing it directly, feeling it directly,
Yeah.
So they get a much more visceral experience and become empowered that eventually they can do it on their own.
That's great.
So someone asked me once, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to run out of clients. And I said, on that day, I will rejoice, because that means everyone's healed.
Right.
So it's not about that to me. I'm really unattached to if someone needs 1 or 10 sessions, they need what they need, and I can't predict that. In fact, if someone answers that question, like if someone calls me and says, how many sessions this is going to take, I'm very direct. I say, I don't know, but
Right.
you'll have a pretty good idea that we're on the right path, even in just one session.
Right.
And in fact, if anyone ever does answer that question, I would run from them because they're
Right.
playing games, what I perceive at least as
Right.
psychic games with your health. I have
Right.
no interest in doing that whatsoever.
Right. Very good. So
Thank you.
then once you identify where, well, the, you go through the body scan, and then do you do the keyhole and then the return to sender, or do you do the return to sender first?
The keyhole was more part of the preventative aspect.
Oh, okay.
So we're on the healing aspect right now, so
Okay.
maybe we'll stick with that.
Okay.
If we do a body scan and we see, for example, that you're holding your mother's grief, we go
Mm.
through the process of I call return to sender. And basically, we connect with that other person's higher self. And again, it's a process that I take people through
Mm-hmm.
um, as needed. And we actually get permission from that higher self doing this process.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, there's a freedom. There's this new information, a visceral experience as, wow, what I'm doing is not helping me. And in this case, my mother actually wants back what's hers.
Mm-hmm.
So I guide people on how to do that. And the other option, of course, is if it is their own, which I've
Mm-hmm.
come up with, or I should say, I intuited a very different process than what I typically hear,
Mm-hmm.
and which is the following. We've all heard the phrase that what we resist persists. Let's just
Right.
consider that a given for right now. So if you go to a practitioner, or even me a few years back, and you say, okay, I have this back pain, and I say, okay, this is about anger at your dad, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So as a healer, we want to remove that. The person's all about get rid of that. Well, what I found, and if you really feel into this, it'll make sense. What I found was the phrase get rid of is a form of resistance.
Mm.
It's arguing with what is, which actually creates more tension, which of course is not healthy and makes the symptoms even worse.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about that, we're multifaceted and some would say dimensional beings who have every possible characteristic within us. If we try to get rid of things, we're actually becoming less whole.
Mm.
And what I've found is wholeness is really the key. Healing happens almost easily after wholeness is on en route.
Right.
So instead of trying to get rid of that, for example, because that would be that person's anger themselves, we
Mm-hmm.
actually embrace it. And what you resist persists. So the opposite kind of has to be true, which is what I embrace and love and honor dissipates. So I take people through a process as well to help dissipate their own anger, their own grief, their own rage, jealousy, whatever it is, from a very loving place.
Nice.
And I hear people say things like, wow, that pain has been there for decades and it is totally gone now.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes in minutes. And I think a big part of it is this dynamic that we've been set up with from culture and big pharma, et cetera, to just get rid of and to stop pain and illness at all costs. Once we know that pain and illness is actually a message that something's out of alignment, we can actually embrace it. Say, okay, what is this message
Absolutely.
really about? And then work with that message. And then when the message is received and when you integrate it and bring it into your life, healing just happens. So to me, it's very different from things I grew up
Oh,
with
totally.
and even things I learned in metaphysics. Now, I'm not here to trash where I've been. Like we said earlier, I embrace where we've been.
Right.
But I think it's important that we all keep opening to something better. At some point, maybe I'll learn something better than this, and in that case,
Right.
I'll write the next book. But for right now, this is working so well, and that's why I'm so excited to share it with you and your readers
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
viewers, listeners. Um, it's just been an amazing experience, really, to be blessed with this information and to have people find me from all over the world. That ebook can travel anywhere real fast.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I do Skype calls with like Cambodia and
Wow.
things that, I couldn't even imagine years ago are a regular occurrence now. So, you know, knock wood, right?
Well, that's awesome. Well, what that reminds me of about not resisting our own pain or whatever, it's like, to me, it's like if I can make friends with whatever is coming up in my heart and my mind and my body because it needs to feel heard.
Yes.
It's like if I looked at that like a little child that was like crying, would I just say, get rid of it? I mean, I used to do
Right.
that.
Sure.
but
We all have.
but instead of, oh honey, what's going on, in that compassionate way. So it sounds like
Yeah.
it's a very loving, compassionate process. And so many of us, like you said, in our culture, I mean, we're taught that illness is the enemy and it needs to be,
Yeah.
defeated or wrestled to the ground versus getting the message. And the only thing I want to, because I want to make sure we get to the keyhole thing, but before we do, I wanted to say, what about asking permission from somebody that, like, let's say you're holding the energy of your mother's grief. So what about asking permission from their higher self? Why is that necessary?
Mhm. Great question. What I have found is that when my client is involved in that kind of communication, there's a softening.
Mm,
When we can see that our mother's higher self actually wants back what
mm-hmm,
is theirs to deal with,
mm-hmm,
what their soul signed up for,
mm-hmm,
there's more willingness to let go of something that might have been held on to very tightly.
mm-hmm.
And even with people that I've worked with numerous sessions, like I intuit every step. Like I don't, the Dave part of me does not pretend to know anything, right?
Right.
I listen in on every step and I even hear things. And even with people that I've done this process with dozens of times, because everything is often multiple layers, I'll share with them, yeah, we need to do the process. And they'll say like, oh, can I just give, and I'm like, you can, but that's no different from just give it back to the universe, cut a cord, and those things are fine if that's what works for you. But in my experience, that's kind of an expensive aspirin in that there's not a lot of learning, active participation in
Right.
making a new direction and a shift in your thinking, your way of being.
Right.
So what I was shown and from my experience found to be very true, when you do the process the way it was shown, you
Yeah.
get results.
Well, it makes sense because it's like if you keep on doing what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten. And so this is something different that you've seen that works.
Yeah.
So, well, awesome. The other thing you had mentioned also I wanted to just address is that if a client says, oh, my mother does not want this back, that it really
Mhm.
isn't her higher self because on a soul level, everybody really gets that they're here to learn on the earth plane. And so if they're really saying that they don't want it back, it's because they're projecting her personality or her ego. Is that accurate?
That's partly it. The other part is the person who I'm working with in that example might not want to give it back
Ah,
because it's part of their identity.
oh,
And that
yes.
manifests in this kind of shutting down of that process. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. I don't look at things like stop signs. Everything that comes up to me is a slight detour sign. We just need to
Right,
shift directions. And it's
right.
like a giant flow chart that just shows up in my head. It's step one, step two, it's just boom, 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 boom. Whatever someone is, wherever they are, whatever they're experiencing, whether it's flow or block or whatever, there's a way through it. But I found you have to go through it. You can't go around it, as you can't jump over it because when you land, you're gonna so it's still gonna be there, right?
Right.
So you have to deal with it and address it head on. And if someone is not willing to give it back, we go into another process to find out, well, what are the benefits and drawbacks
Right.
of you hanging on to it and making it
Exactly.
really clear. And a lot of times the mind is not conscious of these things, but when that
Yeah.
safe space is held, people come up with all kinds of reasons and they're kind of like, wow, I didn't expect that. And that's why I love doing the work because it's so fresh. Everyone's
Yeah.
different. And when people can see something about themselves that they didn't know before, like you mentioned, the aha moment,
Mm-hmm.
everyone loves an aha moment, right?
Yeah.
So, it gives you the gives you the aha, obviously, but it also gives you direction on what to do
Yeah.
differently. And we all have to be really open to changing things. You know, the ego hangs on to ways of being that oftentimes don't really serve us, and we have to not defeat the ego. That goes back to that thing about resistance.
Right.
What I found is if we actually love and embrace the ego, the volume goes from like, 9 to 8 to 7 to 6 kind of thing. It
Right.
never goes to zero. Sorry. Um,
Right.
Maybe if you're enlightened, but I can't speak to that because I don't claim to be enlightened. Um, Even one of the persons that I have met that did fit the qualifications, although they didn't quite use the word, I asked him, "So are you worry free?" And he thought about it for a second. And he leaned over and he said, "I worry less."
Ah.
And I thought that was just so awesome because here's a guy that you wouldn't think worry is at all,
Right.
just being very vulnerable and honest with me that even after this enlightenment stage, it's
Yeah.
not free of pain, it's not free of challenges and difficulties. And I've had a lot of clients that say, this is my last lifetime. I need to achieve enlightenment like now, so I can do
Yes.
the work I'm meant to do. And I remind them that's defeatist thinking. That's it's
Yes.
not going to get you what you're really looking for. That is really searching for something way beyond your control. And that also leads to an unrealistic expectation, which, like we said earlier, always leads to disappointment.
So then, I'm just curious. What would like when you said some people resist giving back the pain from someone else because it's their identity? What kind of an
Mhm.
identity would somebody have a difficult time letting go of? Like, what's it? You know what I mean? A common reason.
The responsible one,
But why
if
would
I,
that be hard to let go of?
it's just so ingrained.
If they weren't
Even things that,
responsible, then they'd have to like look at maybe being responsible for themselves, and it would be a whole different way to.
sure, that can be part of it. I mean, it can be a lot of different things, but that's just one of the things.
Uh huh.
Um, I work with someone this morning who's a therapist in Seattle, and I shared, you've gotten a lot of accolades and a lot of
Yeah.
success financially
Yes.
and status for being this person who you've been, and that's great. Now, how would you like to take it to the next level? Because if you can do what you're doing from this unattached place using the tools that I share with her, then she not only is actually better at what she does, people get better responses,
Right.
and she feels freer because the sense of responsibility is gone. And when that's
Right.
gone, you can really be less attached. And that creates a really strong current of energy going through the
Yes.
practitioner, which is always picked up on by the recipient. So it can come
Totally.
through in the form of energy healing or, vital information.
Oh, that's so
Um,
true.
it can
Well,
be a lot of different things. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I know for me personally, when I got in touch with feeling responsible for other people and how I would just be the helper, it was a way, the identity served me in a way that I got a lot of positive, like, oh, you're so great at helping and you're such a,
Right.
I mean, it was how I got love, but it
Yeah.
also helped me hide out. It helped me stay safe because as long as I was supporting other people in going after their dreams, I didn't have to do my own and be vulnerable. And so,
Very common.
yeah, and so it was definitely there was the payoff there. So very
Right.
cool.
That's it. Like we got to look at the payoff and what are
Right,
you really getting versus what you think you're getting.
right,
Is it getting you what you really want? Even with
right,
all the accolades, status,
right,
the attaboys that I might get,
right,
um, there's always more to be achieved. And it happens when we're sharing our gift, whatever that might be,
right.
whether
Exactly.
it's musician or channeling energy or whatever. When we're in that flow,
Right.
we can be
It's
pretty powerful people, and then we can be a light for others. A lot of people I work with, mostly healers of some kind, not all, of course, but they really want to be there for others. They want this
right,
information. They see, as soon as I elucidate all these points, they're like, I want that.
right,
They want to empower their clients. They want to be a clear vessel. They want
right,
to have their intuition totally online. And my experience is when we manage and heal the many layers that we all put upon ourselves over time, we
right,
become really powerful. Like our intuition is just boom, boom, boom. We just get
right,
information And it's not always about psychic development, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in my experience, it's releasing those layers that really gets you in touch with those inner aspects of your own true self. And
Right.
from there, I think anything's possible.
Absolutely. I mean, well, look what happened with you. Just by being true to your own self, you, within 6 months after you got this clarity, you write this book and it's an Amazon bestseller and you're helping all of these people. And like I said, I used to be in a business where we trained empaths and psychics and mediums, and I really hadn't come across anybody that's really doing the kind of work that you're doing with highly sensitive people and empaths. So it's so cool that you're doing it. Um,
Thank you.
yeah.
I had,
So
I had one,
go ahead.
I'll share this because it's kind of funny. I had one new client this week, and she said that someone recommended my book to her. And she's like, yeah, another book on empaths. Yeah, I've read it all. And she, listed all the books on them, and there's a lot of them now.
Right.
Something told her she really needed to read this one.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just completely blown over. She said, no one has talked about things the way you have.
Right.
And I'm so glad I found you. And, it's just, the stars align when you're ready.
Yes.
Someone else said they went to a
Absolutely.
bookstore and knew they needed something and just sat down and just looked up and there it was,
Yes.
and like, that's the book I need, It has this
Yeah.
energy in it. Even I actually lent it to a friend who leads these groups, and he said, there's something about your book, I can't understand it, but every group I have, someone picks it up and says, can I borrow this? You
Yes.
know, there's a really powerful energy in it already. And, you know, lucky me and hopefully lucky people that read it too.
Well, yeah, it's a very high frequency book, and to me, any type of real universal truth is it resonates for people, and what I love about your work is you really give people permission to fill their cups first, and you give a really understandable reason is because without that, none of us can really flourish and grow and be the light that we're meant to be. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of the traditional religions have sort of put this message out that you need to be totally altruistic all the time and not really be there for yourself. And so there's nothing wrong with being in there for other people, but if it comes from an empty space, you can only give away what you
Exactly.
have. And so I love how
Exactly.
you're really giving people that are in the healing professions permission to really be there for themselves first, and to really understand how when we don't, we get sick and it hurts
Right.
us and we suffer. And once we're
And we're
suffering,
not
it's hard
happy.
to help other people, you know?
Absolutely. One of the more obvious examples of this that I was shown in my meditations with Mother Teresa. I never met her. I can't say anything specifically about
Mm-hmm.
her, but I know that she did a lot of amazing things for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But then I read that in her memoirs, she said she was never happy,
Mm-hmm.
and she even doubted the existence of God. And for
Mm-hmm.
me to hear Mother Teresa say those things
Yeah.
after she was doing everything that culture,
Yes.
family, religion,
Yes.
etc., told her to do,
Yes.
something's out of alignment,
Right.
And if maybe if she was able to do that from a more centered place,
Yes.
a more connected place,
Yes.
and maybe no one told her how to do that, and therefore she wasn't happy.
Right.
I can't speak to her health. I didn't know her when,
Yeah.
but think of the opposite, the current Dalai Lama, who I think about 81 years old, looks like the happiest guy in the world,
Yeah.
looks pretty healthy, and they're kind of doing the similar work, but he's coming from this place of purity.
Yes.
And not to say that she wasn't pure, that might be
I think hers was more
uh,
duty and obligation,
right.
and where
That's
Dalai
probably
Lama,
better.
I
Right,
think, has more of a understanding that he has to be the change that he wants to inspire in others
right.
and
And a
be that
master
full
of
cup.
compassion. You can
Yeah.
tell him anything, and he would just look
Yeah.
at you with a smile.
Yeah.
And I try to do that. I don't know if I'm on that level,
Yeah.
but that's my goal, to be as close to what he does as possible. And I think we can all do that. I mean, if one, like you had mentioned earlier about inspiring, if one person can do it,
Yeah.
anybody can do it. Maybe not
Yeah.
anybody, because sometimes there's, like I probably couldn't play in the NBA, right? So maybe,
Right.
maybe maybe not be careful on how we say anybody can do anything. Um, I can't imagine the 53-year-old guy who was, not even 6 feet
Right.
tall is going to do well in the NBA, no matter how much people say you can do anything.
Right.
So I think by seeing someone embody this total unconditional love and acceptance and detachment and compassion, that's doable. I
Yes.
think anybody can do that to whatever degree is possible. Even 10% of that is probably more than most of us use throughout the day. So if we
Absolutely.
can sort of channel that energy from source, really beautiful things can happen. So much happens in safe space. And,
Absolutely.
years back, I used to laugh at that kind of phrase, like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah.
Had this very Western left brain mind. And here I am teaching it, uh, the universe can be kind of funny sometimes.
Well, and I just think it's so beautiful as a man that you are teaching this, because if more men would embrace this level of sensitivity and celebrate the gifts of embracing the energy that you're embracing, I think the whole world would be a much kinder and compassionate place. And so thank you for doing your work and trusting and putting your message out there. It's so needed. You're such a great role model for men and women. So I want
Thank
to
you.
ask you, because we're almost at the top of the hour, how can people work with you?
Ask.
Okay, so by
I just
phone
have
or
to ask.
through,
Yeah.
yeah,
By phone, Skype, or in person. I
okay,
do live and work in Portland, Oregon. I do travel to
okay,
different West Coast cities, Seattle, San Francisco on occasion.
okay,
And basically, all the information is at my website, which is my name, davemarkowitz.com.
great.
And it's a pretty simple process as far as scheduling. There's an FAQ session. I even do 15-minute free consults. So if someone's not
Oh,
sure if
cool.
they're empathic, I can do a real quick reading and say, yeah, you are, or no, you're not.
Right,
And, we should work together or we shouldn't work together. And either way is
perfect.
fine, right? So, yeah.
So, and if there's one message, what one message are you most passionate about that you just want to make sure our viewers know about before we say goodbye?
And when you ask a question like that, it has to be a gut answer, right? You can't think about it. And the first word that came to me was compassion, but we
Mm,
spoke about it, right?
that's okay.
But it is that important. I do believe that empaths have this higher degree of compassion that we can really feel where other people are and really connect with them. And sometimes that alone is a healing.
Yeah,
And imagine if we were all just more compassionate, walking around, really connecting
yeah,
with anybody we come in contact with. And by using these tools, you can do that without getting overwhelmed. Growing
okay,
up in New York and being in the city a lot, there's thousands of people in every block. You would, just not, there's no going to thrive there
right.
with all that energy coming at you. So maybe not too ironic that after I moved out here, I was able to intuit these steps a lot better than perhaps I would have back there.
Yeah,
So that compassion, I think, is the key. And it
cool.
doesn't cost anything. It's the choice. It's
Yes,
oftentimes not our automatic default setting,
yes,
even though maybe we're born that way. It sort of gets wiped
right,
out or run over, if you will. We have to choose it. And
right,
it's a constant choice. And this is one of the things we spoke about earlier about the process of
right.
waking up and thriving. It's a bunch of choices that you have to make every day, sometimes every hour, sometimes
Right,
several times in that hour. Who
right,
am I being right now? Am I being cold? Am I being
right.
scared, in fear? Or can I be open and compassionate and just welcome whatever comes my way with love and acceptance, trusting
Nice.
that there is some plan going on. And years ago, also, I wouldn't have wanted to recognize that, but clearly I see at least, and it sounds like a lot of people you work with as well,
Absolutely.
and yourself, we believe there is some kind of guidance system. And when we can slow down and really access that system, you can't access it if you're running around
Right,
all anxious or whatever,
right.
or overwhelmed with other people's energies. Once you start clearing these things out, you slow down, your connection increases, and your guidance just comes online. It's like, oh, I should be
Yes,
doing this, and I could be doing this, and oh,
yes.
you want me to do this? Okay, show me
Yeah,
how. And then, a book falls in your lap, or a practitioner
yeah.
comes to you, to you somehow on a Facebook post or something. So I think it starts with compassion. Long
Awesome.
answer, short
Well,
word.
thank you so much, David. This is, or
Thank you.
Dave, this has been so fun and I think so so needed in our world, your work, and I really encourage everybody
Thanks.
to go to davemarkowitz.com and get the book. And I'd love to have you back sometime, and we'll talk more. And so with
Great.
that, I want to say goodbye for now, though, and thanks for being here.
Bye for
Okay,
now. Thank you.
bye.
Ciao.
All right, Dave Markowitz. Wow, that was so awesome. Yeah, I just really resonated with his book. I would highly recommend it. So with that, I just want to make a couple of announcements, and then we're going to wrap up for the evening. I always do a coaching tip every single week, and so this week, since we're talking about really getting in touch with what may be going on in our bodies that may belong to other people, I thought what would be a really good coaching tip is to really just give yourself like 5 minutes. If you want to do more, do it. But just sit down without your phone on and just scan your body and really ask yourself, what's going on in my body? Is this energy mine? If it's not mine, whose is it? And really identify if there's something going on in your body, or whatever illness or pain or issue that you, or maybe something you have emotionally going on. Really try to get in touch with whether it's really your energy or if it's somebody else's. And I would really recommend getting Dave's book. It's amazing book. It's a very quick read too. And I've been on this path for a long time, and there were some things in there that I just really resonated with that have already helped me in letting go of some energy that I didn't realize wasn't mine. So that's our coaching tip for the week, and make sure you do it, and make a note to yourself to do it so that you really do it, and let me know how it goes. A couple of other things. I am a coach, and I just wanted to let everybody know that if you are a person that is a coach or any type of a helping professional, or anybody that wants to reach a global audience, I can help you. I've got all these skills in terms of helping you have your own live stream presence, whether that's through a talk show or just a seminar or a webinar. I can do webinars on Zoom or anything that is related to getting you out there in front of a global audience. And the good news is you don't even have to have the tech skills, because I can actually do it without, in other words, I can do this remotely for you. So even if you wanted to have your own show, I don't even have to be on the camera. I can actually be behind the scenes opening the show. Or if you do want somebody to co-lead something with you, I can do that as well. And I can manage the chat or other interactions with people that are watching. So if you want any support with that, I do a free 30-minute strategy session. So if you want to talk about your own live stream or live webinar, please just go up to my website and go up to the streaming and webinar services. Also, I do life coaching on living your highest calling. As a woman in midlife, I do understand what it's like to feel like the window of time is closing in on you. And if you're feeling like, God, I don't want to die with my music still in me, I really want to share my gift with the world, or maybe I have an inkling of what it is, but I'm not quite sure, I can help you get clear, and I can help you get it out there. So if you are interested in getting support with that, I just highly recommend either contact me or somebody, but get the support you need, because I couldn't do it without support. If you are interested, I do offer a free 30-minute session about your calling. Go up to my website and go to the coaching section, and I can help you with that. And then what else? I also wanted to mention my guest for next week. Next week we've got Therese Tucker, who is all about finding your soul purpose. So I'm really excited to talk with Therese. And so she's going to be really fun, because I'm all about, living your highest calling and your purpose. And so it's going to be really fun to talk to her. So make sure you tune in for her. And last but not least, what's one thing that you can do to be true to yourself starting tomorrow? Put it on your calendar so you do it, and then your life will transform. With that, have a great week, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.